All right, Ariel, we're going to start with you. Then we'll get to the brand. And it's the only scripted question I ever ask. But what's your franchise story? How did you accidentally fall into franchising?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me here. Excited to talk to you and talk about franchising, which I love. It really was, I think, accidentally for me. I really had no background in franchising. I had no family story in franchising, and nothing really there. I had a background in marketing and was looking for sort of my next opportunity. And I stumbled across Qdoba, the fast casual Mexican concept, which was about 50-50 franchise corporate, and just sort of found my place. It really was just by accident, just as you said.
So, and part of the reason I asked that question is because it's going to be the same journey for a franchise buyer. And I will say I've had the privilege of talking with many Woodhouse franchisees, and it's like I was a fan of the brand. I was a customer. I had a corporate career. I was done with my corporate career, and I bought into a franchise. And so for you, it's like I had a marketing background. I accidentally fell into this industry, and then I fell in love with it. So as you've expanded, what has been some of the aha moments that have existed for, and particularly around franchisee success as you've explored so many different areas of the business?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that just pops everywhere you go is passion. Some franchisees have passion for the brand before they came in, which is mostly the case for Woodhouse. Some franchisees have a passion for being their own boss and building their own, sort of creating their own destiny and building their own thing and maybe leaving something for their family. But it's passion. And then, I think that's what really gets them started. And then what makes them successful is like maintaining that passion. And so, sometimes that can create challenges, because with passion comes just like emotion and, like fire. But I think for every challenge that comes as a result of passion, like every success story does too. And it's incredible to see some of these franchisees over the years and just truly how passionate they are. And I think the other thing really is, which is related to passion, is drive. You can't be an entrepreneur. You can't be your own boss. You can't own your own business without that. And I think that it's also incredible to see how hard some of these franchisees work every single day to get started and, get going. And then usually there's a payoff. They get to reap the benefits of being your own boss, and having a team and that sort of thing. So it's really cool to see and watch and be a part of.
I think a lot about expectations, and more so whenever I've worked with more on the disgruntled side of a franchisee, and they talk about whether it's sales not producing or marketing, it's almost like they look at everything to blame other than themselves. And I said, well, okay, so to be fair, that could be partly true if the expectations aren't set properly when you get into that business. And so how much is it on the franchisor to educate the franchisee that this is not an easy thing? Like, there's no like get rich quick scheme when it comes to buying a franchise. Here's how much you're going to have to invest in marketing. Here's what you should expect to invest in building the right building and the right real estate. How important is that expectation setting for the franchisor to ensure that drive and passion continues on later on?
I'm so glad you brought that up. It is so critical. And I think that it's really easy to avoid that because that makes a sale harder. And I think that there's certainly probably franchise sales teams out there that, their goal is to make it seem as easy and turnkey and mailbox money as they can to sell licenses. And I can guarantee that those brands will not be successful, because if there is not a mutual understanding of what it takes and can the people do it, you're setting yourselves up for failure. So at Woodhouse, we have a phenomenal franchise development and sales team who really takes the time to get to know our candidates and has so many conversations with them. They get to know them personally. They truly know their background. And by the time they come to meet us in our office for our decision day, they're like old friends. And I love that. It's not something I've seen before. It seems fairly unique, at least in my experience, to Woodhouse. And as a result, like almost 100% of the people who come to meet us on decision day end up being franchisees.
Mhm.
Because if they weren't going to, they probably wouldn't have made it that far. And we spend a lot of time before they sign talking about what's going to happen and what is this process like. And we encourage them to talk to as many franchisees as possible, top performers, bottom performers, people in the middle, and really understand, because if they sign up for something that they don't know what to expect, it's 9 out of 10 times it's not going to be successful. And that's really unfortunate for them. And it's really unfortunate for us as a brand. So we do everything we possibly can to avoid that. We have a pretty good track record of being successful there.
Do you think the governor is the investment? Meaning, Woodhouse is not for someone that, immediate job replacement. It's more like someone that's had some success in life, built up some wealth, and is now trying to increase the wealth for their family. Does that give a governor of who comes to the table? And the reason I ask it, because I almost think like franchising as a whole is almost like an umbrella statement, but there's a difference between like a franchise operator and a franchise investor. And because of the investment, it's almost like the caliber of someone that comes to Discovery Day has to be higher. And if the expectations weren't set properly, it's almost shocking because they have to come to the table with some sense of wealth building already.
Totally. So yeah, I mean, I think as a baseline, because of the investment, we are getting higher caliber people, if you will, to the table. So yeah, I mean, most of the people who come through, it's like sort of their second career. Sometimes they're young and they were very successful young and early and like kind of had their first retirement. And sometimes they're like truly in like sort of the second phase of their career in life, age-wise. So that, yes, number one, totally agree with you. I think that's right. And then I think that combined with, they spend time in a spa and talking to franchisees, they realize that, the Woodhouse Spa and spas in general, it's sort of a complex business model. We don't just make chicken fingers, it's not a single modality wellness business. Like it's pretty complex. It's a bigger space than some other opportunities out there. And so I think that when, between the baseline sort of wealth and success factor and then understanding the business model, it really weeds out people who are kind of not up for the challenge. So yeah, I think the brand does that a little bit for itself.
Can you think back to a time where someone comes to Discovery Day and in your gut, you just know this isn't the right fit? And can you think through what those feelings were that made them not the right fit?
I'm trying to think. So I've been with Woodhouse for a little over a year, and I don't think I cannot.
Or go back to previous brands, like just
Sure,
the
yeah.
quality of someone that you're like, this is why franchising isn't for you.
Yeah. So I would say a couple things. Like number one, they ask no questions. There's no curiosity, because even if you've done all your research, there's still questions. And you can't get everything you need to know from like reading a brochure. You really have to talk to the people. So if you come in and you think you have it all figured out and you have no questions, like you definitely don't. So that to me would be a red flag. And then I think oftentimes you'll get that person in the room who all of their questions are centered around like, well, you're saying it's this way. Can we do it this way? Or like, how strict are you on following the rules? And my philosophy is like, it doesn't have to be like literally exactly the same, down to the toilet paper everywhere you go. But like, if you're coming in and already sort of having a challenge with like the consistency and brand standards that comes along with franchising, it's probably going to be tough. And maybe you'd be better off doing your own thing. That person has to weigh the benefits of like, is the support and all the tools and things that come with franchising going to outweigh the desire to really just create your own brand? So I would say like those are two pretty big red flags. And then I think the third is just kind of the person who thinks they know it all and have it all figured out. Because if you do, why go for a franchise? Why not keep 100% of what you make and just do your own thing? So Those things, and usually it's a combination of those things are typically like red flags. They don't usually work out.
It's interesting when you're giving that answer. I'm thinking just staying in a career, doing a job interview, and if I'm on the other side of the table, it's the same red flags come up with a candidate when they're looking for a career change. If they're obviously interviewing at our place, but same is probably true for dating. Like it's all the same thing. I think the miss by franchisees, the two biggest misses that I see that swing them negative if they are approved, is one, they come to the table and don't want to be the highest performer. They focus in more on average or below average. And even when they're doing their due diligence, they're like, I want to talk to someone who has failed. I'm like, why would you want to do that? Don't you want to understand the blueprint of those that have succeeded?
Right.
And so it's almost like a mindset. And then the second thing is you're buying in, like more than anything, you're buying an operational model that kicks off cash. Like if you oversimplify this, and so when they come in and say, well, can I do this, or can I tweak this, or am I going to follow the rules? They're making a part of their investment is going to be wasted because that investment is to cover the cost of buying into this operational structure that's going to kick off cash.
Right.
And so it's like both of those end up being mindset shifts that have to happen. But if they come in, and actually as an extension of that, if they come in and also think that this is a one-way discussion, like, okay, Ariel, you impress me. Well, no, I mean, this is a bigger deal. This is a partnership in the general sense of that word. And so if they come in and they don't show like excitement or positivity, then that can hurt. I vividly remember we were doing a persona project with your old company with Dry Bar. There were these two ladies from Oklahoma, and they had been rejected 100 times as a franchisee. And they're like, we are going to get in. And they were telling me this story about how they wore yellow shirts, and they were like, they're going to prove to them that we are the right franchisees. And they end up getting approved down the line. But it's interesting, like that's where all the things that we're talking to start merging of passion, drive, personality, partnership, team player. Like that's how you start defining a good franchisee, right?
Totally. Yeah, there's so many dimensions. And by the way, like we're going to then go work with them for the next, hopefully 20 plus years, right? Like, so there has to be there has to be like a mutual understanding, a mutual liking. It has to be a mutual fit.
When you think about this successful franchisee, someone, and it doesn't have to be at Woodhouse, it could be anyone in your career. Obviously the passion, the drive stands out. How important is the scale mindset and the speed to scale for those that have been the most successful franchisees that you've worked with?
I think it's important. I think you have to have that like growth mindset. And to your point before of people who just kind of want to settle in the average or are fine with being below average, like I don't want to add them to my portfolio. And so I think I want to see people, and I think it's important for success for people to want to kind of get to that next level, whether that's being the top performing location in the system, whether that is setting goals for themselves to then open a second or third location. I think all of those things would sort of count towards that, but that like growth mindset and like continuously raising the bar is definitely a trait that we see in our most successful franchisees. People who settle in the middle of the pack, and like maybe they never attend a network webinar, they don't read the newsletters, like they're just sort of like getting by in the middle and nobody really notices them. Like that's not going to lead. You're never going to be overly successful that way.
Is there anything that the silent frustration that you have when someone's like, I'm not winning as a franchisee, that you're like, okay, but if you just did this, anything stand out on that category?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it in the beginning is the like, it's a little bit of the harsh reality of like, look in the mirror, whether you're struggling or sort of just in the middle, but have a desire to improve. It's pretty typical, not just in franchising. Like I do this and we all do this. Before you look in, you look out and you look for like, what is causing me to not hit what I'm trying to hit or be successful. And I think in franchising in particular, it's pretty easy to find the people to blame. And a lot of times, being in this industry for a while and having a team with a long track record in the franchising space, like it's usually pretty obvious that maybe it's your manager or your director is creating this terrible culture and nobody wants to work for them. But like, you can't see that because you're on the inside, but it's so obvious to us. And so balancing that, feedback, I guess, is part of franchising. But oftentimes you can see instantly like what the like quick fix could be, and you got to deliver that news softly.
I'm gonna share a statement. I wanted your comments on it. So a big thing that I've been focused on, and we do these franchise assessments where we're trying to understand the viability of the franchise opportunity and how does that relate to what the franchisor wants to accomplish. Because franchisor is going to have a growth goal, and then franchisees buying in. How does the story of even as simple as an FDD set them up for success? And so a big thing, and I'm in a minority on this right now, but my viewpoint is when you're budgeting to become a franchise owner, you budget 10% of the investment into marketing. And so these grand opening fees that tend to be in item 7 are lighter than what that number is. It's rarely this 10%. I have a client beautifully, they engineered what their cost of user acquisition is. They knew exactly what it was, $80, and they would get a customer, and that lifetime value of that customer is $3,000. So no brainer, spend $80 over and over and over again, and you can get there. And if I looked at how much they were recommending to spend on marketing, even on ongoing basis of 2%, 30 out of their first 32 franchisees were not hitting profitability in year one. I said, this is crazy. You have the numbers. Why not do it? And so they re-engineered it. They said now they jacked up that number, and now the franchisees are breaking even at a faster pace, which now is going to allow the business to scale. And so it's such a small thing. But if franchisees, and it's same for franchisors, like the reason a franchisor stalls out in growth is they don't have the capital to go market the franchise opportunity. And in my opinion, most of the time, as long as real estate support was there and hiring was right, it comes down to does the franchisee want to spend the money that it's going to take to market to the customer base? So it's a big thing that I'm hooked on, because I think that they start pointing fingers, and yes, it could be staffing, it could be location on occasion, but then you look at capital going outbound to get customer acquisition, it's always so light. How does that long-winded statement connect with you?
I mean, as a former CMO, I couldn't agree more. I think it's pretty well known that like if times get tough, the first thing people cut back on is marketing, which is literally the complete opposite of what you need to do to try to get your business going again. So I would agree. I think that generally speaking, when you start something new, doesn't matter what it is, you have to overinvest in marketing, because you have to tell people who you are, where you are. Sometimes, you're opening a brand that everybody knows, but they don't know that you've just opened a new location. So it takes time and money to do that. And a 2%, depending on what your AUV is, but I take that back. Doesn't even matter what your AUV is. A 2% contribution to a national marketing fund is not enough marketing, because the reality is, in a marketing fund, there are, I would say probably 50%, if you're doing a good job, of that fund is going towards actual marketing, like direct customer acquisition marketing. The other portion is going towards everything you need to enable customer acquisition marketing. And so take whatever you're contributing and basically cut it in half if you want to be safe. And that's really what you're spending on marketing. And it's just nowhere near enough. And I think a lot of, in my experience, despite the local required marketing spend component of the franchise agreement and FDD, a lot of franchisees just don't do it. And those are the ones who really, I think, are struggling to grow. So I completely agree with you that from the grand opening spend to ongoing marketing, typically it's too low to hit the goals. And to your point, if you know exactly what it costs to acquire a customer, it's not like you're just throwing money out there and hoping that it works. It is dollar for dollar, and it's silly not to spend it, but it's so common.
I mean, and it goes across both sides. Like if I were to take every franchisor that I worked with on franchisee acquisition, they talk about what is my cost per lead. I'm like, no, it should be cost per application, cost per deal. Like, let's not focus on the garbage number. Let's actually focus on customer acquisition, which is as a franchisee. And on the consumer side, if you start nailing that, then why wouldn't you spend it all day long? And the reason why you wouldn't do it is it goes back to our first part of the conversation on expectation setting. They say, well, because the franchisor told me to spend X, and when the franchise department, the sales department is trying to get deals done, and you're like, hey, we're going to increase the marketing spend, they're like, well, that's going to change the total investment. It's like, right. But I think far too often we focus on selling franchises, not expectation setting, not thinking about scale. And therefore, if there's so much pressure to sell, we miss out on an opportunity to bring in someone that's going to spend the right amount of capital to build a tremendous business so they can scale. It's just a different viewpoint, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I look at it as like it's circular, right? Like if my franchise development team tells me you need to lower these numbers because it's getting harder for us to sell, then what I would say is, well, then it might be easier for you to sell this year, but it's going to be harder for you to sell next year because the people who open under that lower spend aren't going to be as successful as you need them to be to then go help you sell more. So do you want it now or later? That's what I would say. Luckily, my franchise development team at Woodhouse actually would like us to increase some of the numbers, which I've never seen before. And so we have a good partnership on that. But yeah, I mean, it's short-term gain for long-term pain if you're going to cut that number down. And that's, and it's not just long-term pain for sales, it's long-term pain for the brand. And it's just not something we're willing to like give in on.
Well, then on the reverse side to the franchisee, and part of, I'm thinking about them as an audience in our discussion, a franchisor that is increasing the fees to make it more transparent, so the total all-in cost aligns to what you're going to spend. For a franchise buyer, you have to understand the franchisor is not going to make money off of this fee that you pay them. They're going to make it off of the royalty. And so, of course, the franchisor is motivated to help give you the tools to be as successful as you can, because if you're not, then the royalty is not going to be sufficient for the cost of operating your business from the franchisor standpoint. And so I think from an educational standpoint, for franchisees to understand that when you're doing your due diligence, finding or attaching to a franchisor that actually tries to drive home the proper investment to drive you to success or to set you up for success, that would be a positive flag that I'd be looking for in my sales.
Totally. If you see a super low as a franchisee or a prospective franchisee looking at different opportunities, if you see fees there that are really low, that would be concerning. That to me feels like, maybe not a bait and switch, but a like, let's get you, but then like, but we don't necessarily care about your long-term success or your early success, right? So spot on. Those fees should not scare people away. They should show that like we care about being successful.
I want to close in with a focus on, there's someone watching this. What do you want them to know about Woodhouse as an opportunity? I want to tee it up with what I have found or I've been impressed by when looking at Woodhouse. And one is, when the massage envies of the world came into the marketplace, a lot of competition was built up, but all it was duplicating Massage Envy, which makes sense. Like it's an easy play. And so now Woodhouse is in a category of one. And you can see there are some saying, okay, how do we transition to compete against Woodhouse? Because they know like the depth of the spa experience is so high that it actually protects the brand in any waivers from, in my opinion, from a labor standpoint, which is the most critical attack back to the single massage envy type businesses. Yeah. And now Woodhouse has built that. And then, so that's the business model. And then if I look above it, when I've talked with all the franchisees, it doesn't get credit, and you can't see this on the website, but the depth of the culture is so impressive to me that there are a lot of fans of the brand, but it's business owners that talk culture first. And when they talk culture first, I know that their staffs are going to be stickier because they're going to treat their staff that same way that they came into the system. So those are the two things that impress me that might not be visible to the outside world if they're generally looking at this. What else do you want a candidate to know about Woodhouse?
Yeah, I want to touch on the culture piece real quick because I am just blown away by that when I go visit franchisees. excuse me, I think we've got several franchisees in the system, multi-unit owners who have like some members of their family are involved in the team. And those who are not part of their family have been with them like since the beginning and have become family. And you sit down for a meal with these people, with these groups and these teams, and you really can't tell sometimes, am I sitting at a family meal or is this a work meal? And I think that is just amazing, and it creates this this bond and this like shared accountability and shared desire for success that then trickles down to like the frontline staff, which is, you're right, you can't see that, you can't read that anywhere, but it's truly amazing. And the franchisees, as supportive of they are as their teams, are also supportive of each other. And that is just incredible. You don't see that in every system. In some systems, you see more competition than like camaraderie and connection and support. So that's fantastic. I think like from a financial investment standpoint, one of the great things about Woodhouse is there's multiple revenue streams. So of course we have like our core spa business. We then have retail, which goes well with spa. And some of those other players have retail too, but it's less of a spa experience. And so you're less inclined to buy. But here we have like the best estheticians and the best massage therapists who are continuing the care from the room out into the retail space and telling you, okay, this is how you can extend the results of your facial. These are the products that will help you do that. So doesn't even feel like a sale. It feels like a professional recommendation. So you have your service sales, you have your retail sales, and then we have a massive gift card business because Woodhouse is truly a destination and it's truly a gift. There's other concepts out there that, you might take yourself to once a month just because you need that massage and you can get in. But it's not necessarily like a destination that you would want to present to somebody who you're offering a gift to. And so that is a huge revenue stream for our franchisees, are those gift card sales. So that's like, the first thing. The second thing I would say on the financial piece is just given sort of the times we're in and there's maybe still some uncertainty and whatnot, we have a really broad demographic. I think that a lot of times actually new franchisees are surprised. They think that our core demo is really in that upper, sort of upper tier. And the truth is like we span. So we're very, I would say, evenly distributed between like 35 and 65. And even on the fringes, you have people who come in with gift cards who realize, wow, this actually is an accessible opportunity. This is an accessible experience, and I want to come more. And then of course you have, the people who are already coming more often and not using gift cards. But so, we're I would say relatively insulated from sort of just different economic times because we're not targeting one group of people who may be like over impacted than another. So I think between all of those things and just the beauty of the brand and the demand for services, it's a phenomenal brand and it's a phenomenal opportunity for really, really passionate franchisees.
I want to add one comment on the end of this. And the only reason that I'm adding this is, one, I enjoy cruising. I like going on cruise ships. On the demographic side, and it's just fascinating just to think through this. On a cruise ship, the spa services, obviously they have a captive audience because of who's on the ship, but it's not just for suite class. It is for the entire ship. And you watch all these folks come through and finding ways to add wellness back into life. And so out here, you have all these wellness brands that have been created that have done a tremendous job of educating the importance of taking care of yourself, both from a confidence standpoint and from a body standpoint, and both have impact. And yet you think that this is just for the spa turns elite of elite, but no, it is every human being. And I think that audience continues to grow as time continues to go on. And so then you might try a competitor on a one single thing, but then you come for the big experience and you start seeing like your holistic journey could actually be taken care of in a Woodhouse. And I think that's the stickiness, which still goes back to our marketing thing. It's a numbers game of educating more human beings that Woodhouse exists in those communities. And when they try it, they fall in love because of the culture that you've created. So
exactly. And if that all works, then we're very successful.
Well, my last closing statement. First, thank you for doing this. When I was talking to the franchisees and working on this project, I asked them about culture. And in any business, that Woodhouse is a part of Radiance, and Radiance is a part of private equity. When depending on who's in charge or leadership, can ultimately impact the franchisees. And what struck me is none of them were in a place where I no longer want to be a part of this when the journey has shifted hands, but all of them were very excited about the team that's in place who is now supporting them. And the line that stuck out to me, they said, one franchisee said, it was starting to feel a little bit more like corporate America, and I bought into this for culture. But then they paused and they said, and now I can see the culture is absolutely at the top of this, and that's why I want to continue to scale with Woodhouse. And it was such an impressive statement to hear, and that's kudos to you and your team that you're listening to them, you're giving them a voice, which in turn that's where partnership is built. And so clearly, what I hear good things, and that means you're
that's
doing
great.
So.
That's great to hear. We're trying. That's our goal, and so it's great to hear that that's coming through. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ariel, thank you for doing this. I'm grateful for the time that you gave me. Appreciate it. For anybody watching, obviously, you can find more information either attached to this video or go to Woodhouse and click on the franchise tab. Thanks for watching. This is another episode of Meet the Franchise. Take care.